All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Board Development Committee of the West End Opportunity Partnership. I'm Jennifer Hancock, the chair of this committee, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 11:04 a.m. Eastern Time. I want to welcome my colleagues and Rita Phillips, who is with us today. We'll have a couple of other committee members joining us in progress, but I want to go ahead and get started today and invite you. Hopefully you had an opportunity to receive the agenda and the meeting minutes yesterday. I want to give you a moment to review our meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was May 7th of 2024. And when you've had an opportunity to review those, and unless there's any edits or amendments, I'll be happy to take a motion to approve.
I motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Craddock. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Thank you so much. I want to give you a few updates today regarding the nomination process. Since we last met, we have been informed that the NAACP has decided to relinquish their seat on the board. We did receive a written correspondence from the NAACP explaining their decision. They subsequently released that to the media. We have prepared a response to the media. If that has not been circulated, Rita, would you please share it with this committee in advance of its placement in the Courier? Have we shared the editorial that's been drafted by Dr. Wade and others for the Courier Journal in response to the decision of the NAACP to relinquish their seat?
Yes, we do have a copy.
We have an opt-ed, but I don't think
it hasn't been distributed
yet.
Okay.
It hasn't been published yet, but it's not technically in response to.
Sure. It's just, that's a good clarification. It's really to update the community as to where we are, where we're going.
Yes.
We felt it was important to have a public statement now because I'm sure you, like all of us, are getting questions, possibly concerns about that decision. I anticipate we'll have some time to talk about that at the full board meeting on Monday. We've been very transparent and open as a committee about this process along the way, so I couldn't have this meeting today without acknowledging that decision by the NAACP and giving us some space to respond to that. If you have any discussion that you would like to have about that today, I certainly want to create some space for that. So let me just pause, open it up, and see if anyone has anything to share.
My only question is the opt-ed piece itself. Is it on behalf of board? Like, what's the signature? You know, who's signing the opt-ed piece? Like, how's it coming out and how it will be published?
Great question, Dr.
The piece is supposed to be published in this Sunday's edition of the Courier. It's going out over my signature.
Okay.
And, Dr. Wade was very instrumental in helping us to craft the statement.
Yeah, I guess my only.
And the focus of the statement is on our responsibility under the statute, the enthusiasm that we feel about going forward, the kinds of things we've accomplished, and what we anticipate West Louisville being like as we keep going forward. It is not at all a direct attack on the NAACP. It does not name any specific person or seek to explain any circumstances. We all thought that that would not be prudent. The focus is on our enthusiasm for our mission and just going forward.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll distribute that to the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think just to eliminate any, unintended negative outcomes, particularly as we have the board meeting on Monday, if it is being released on this upcoming Sunday, if you probably send it out to the board in some capacity saying, this op-ed piece that would be formulated probably would be good, because if not, I think it'll probably provide some negative fuel in regards to that. Some conversations on Monday. And kind of, as we know, the makeup of the board is somewhat fragmented at times as it relates to opinions and perspectives. So getting that out in front of the board before it's released on Sunday could be helpful. In some regards.
Excellent feedback.
Dr. Paddock, the plan was to send that out. We have been monitoring with the Courier Journal when they plan to publish it. And
Yes, ma'am.
so we thought they were going to do it last week, but they didn't. So the plan is to send it out with the board materials. So you all will have it before it's published.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's like
perfect.
it'll go out today, tonight, or tomorrow. So yeah,
Okay.
it'd be a part of that so that you can see.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. So yeah. Yes, ma'am.
That's good advice.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good. I want to also acknowledge what I heard, and thank you for raising that, Dr. Craddock. At our last meeting, we had a member of our board, Mike Nagel, who commented on the fact that oftentimes our opposition is faster to communicate. And I think sometimes we do that intentionally as a way to not be reactive, but thoughtful and deliberate in our response. And I think this is such a strategic moment in time for us to own the narrative regarding what's happening on this board with this organization, what the future holds for us. I hope that as the dust continues to settle on the NAACP's decision, that we can continue to work on creating alignment on our board so that we aren't so fragmented, so that we can continue to negotiate through conflict, leave that in the rear view and really focus on the mission at hand, because we have a lot of exciting opportunities that are really close now in the forefront. The NAACP seat, you guys, is one that will be transitioned to an advocacy seat. We do have at least one prospect who's expressed interest in being considered for that seat, but I want to encourage all of us to be thinking about some additional nominees, because of course we'll be seeking two now for that particular seat, which leads me to some additional updates as it relates to open seats on our board. At the last meeting, we talked a lot about the process of the nominators for our 4 neighborhood members that are up for renewal. I want to recognize the feedback of Lyndon Pryor, who stated at our last board meeting that we should have an equitable process as it relates to the individual nominees coming directly to the nominators versus nominees self-selecting or self-reporting directly to the partnership. And those individuals who come directly to the partnership will be rerouted to the nominators so that the nominators will consistently be that first funnel, and they'll be evaluating prospects with the criteria that we'll provide them, and ultimately will provide us as a committee 2 nominees for each of the 4 neighborhoods. I'm excited to tell you that 3 of the 4 neighborhood reps have agreed to be renominated, and I'm talking about Alicia representing Shawnee. I'm talking about Desmond representing Algonquin, and Dr. Gabe, who's representing Russell. The 4th neighborhood member is Mike Nagel representing Portland. He's undecided at this time as to his interest in being considered for renomination. And he has agreed to let me know in July, but agreed wholeheartedly to help get the message out about the need to recruit nominators. I want to now update you about a recent meeting I had with Dr. Jones and the management team of the partnership regarding the process to communicate this nominator opportunity to those 4 neighborhoods. Dr. Wade was invited, but was traveling that day and wasn't able to join us. So we've since updated her. She's now engaged in the process. I just want to walk you through briefly. I'm going to have to pull up a different screen so that I can look at my notes. This meeting took place earlier this month. It looks like 2 weeks ago, excuse me, from today. We agreed that we would review the process today in this meeting. Once we align, if we can agree to the process, I'll present this at our board meeting on Monday. We thought that we would spend the month of July announcing to the public in those 4 neighborhoods that we are seeking nominators. We would use social media as well as establish some easels and boards that we would place on easels with paper applications to become a nominator at Simmons College, the YMCA, LCCC, AMPT, Black Coffee, and Goodwill. Rita has agreed to reach out to those establishments to secure their permission, and Dr. Wade's working on designing those boards for us. Once we finalize the design, and assuming that you all agree, I'm going to pause in just a moment and get you to respond and edit and ultimately finalize this plan. But once we agree, I think we can move forward pretty quickly so that we give almost the entire month of July as our real push to call to action for those 4 neighborhoods. We also want to make sure that we're reaching out to younger audiences, because one of the seats that's up for renewal is the seat that requires an 18 to 30-year-old person. And so we really need to target a younger demographic, and we want to make sure that we're communicating that as well. We'll have an application for nominators, and then our goal is, if our nominators are activated and trained in the month of July, that they will begin recruiting candidates in the month of August, so that by the 1st of September, right after Labor Day, ideally, this is an ambitious schedule, but this is also one that we can adjust if it's not going as planned. But the idea would be, after Labor Day, this committee reconvenes and we start interviewing candidates, a total of 8. So we'll need to spread this across a couple of meetings, but spend the 2nd and 3rd weeks of September interviewing candidates from each of the 4 neighborhoods, so that by our September board meeting, which is the last Monday in September, we bring forward our 4 recommendations to the full board. So let me pause there and get you to respond, edit, tell me what you like or don't like. And then I want to talk a little bit more about another element of the nominators agreement.
Jennifer has been pretty consistent with our conversations that we've had over the past meetings and then in our board meetings as well. So I don't have anything to add or take away from what you shared.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I agree with Doctor that I like the process, but it does seem a little time intensive. So my question is, for next year, when do those members, those seats fall off? And do we need to, as soon as we get done filling those, start to replace those?
That's a great point, Chris. Rita's working on preparing a calendar for us so that once we kind of get this busy work behind us, we will start being much more proactive and giving us several months of advance notice, so that we go into the new year anticipating those renewals, so that it's not all happening at one time. So she's put together a spreadsheet, and if that hasn't been shared with you all, we'll make sure that we distribute that at the conclusion of today's meeting. But it shows who's renewing in 25 and 26. So yes, we are absolutely wanting to get way more ahead of this for sure. Before I go, I'm going to come back to the nominators, but I'm going to buy a little time because I'm hoping Amy Cubbage will be on the Zoom with us in just a bit. So let me give you a few other updates about other open seats, and then we'll circle back to our neighborhood members. We are still working on the foundation seat. There's an upcoming meeting with the Humana Foundation that Laura and Rita are having. So we'll have updates after that meeting. The Louisville Urban League, Lyndon and I have talked. He is willing to be renominated. He and I are having lunch together on Wednesday of next week. And I'll be finding out who the second nominee from the league is. So that's another set of interviews that this committee will be responsible for having. And we can schedule another meeting before September to contemplate that seat, as well as the advocacy seat, should we be ready to have prospects for that seat. And then on Monday, and I just want to tee this up, but not disclose anything out of respect for Dr. Wade. Dr. Wade's seat is up for renewal, and she'll be sharing an update with the full board on Monday regarding her intent as it relates to the seat that she holds, which is the mayor's appointment. So we'll learn from her on Monday what her plan is for her seat. And again, just want to respect her interest in sharing her own story and sharing that with all of us at one time on Monday. Let me pause and ask you, Laura and Rita, if I've missed anything, or if you would add anything regarding open seats at this point.
No, I don't have anything to add.
I don't
think we've
either, and
covered-
I'm checking with Amy on that meeting.
Okay, no worries. One thing that I do want to introduce to you all now is an idea that comes from a couple of things. One, we've experienced some difference of perspectives on our board as to, from a governing standpoint, what is the role of board members as it relates to communicating on behalf of the partnership to the media, to the public on their own personal social media channels, as well as the fact that as a still relatively young board, we have yet to have an established agreement regarding board conduct. And I will personally express to you my own opinion that I think in the absence of a shared agreement, we all come to this with our own unique lived experience, having some served a number of prior boards and some having never served in this capacity. And so I want to give some grace and some space for the fact that we're all in different places on our journey. But I do think we've arrived at a point where it would benefit all of us to tie us all together from an accountability and a commitment point of view, to have some shared commitments as to how we show up as board members. So what I'd like to present to you today is a document that outlines some board agreements. I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond, to edit as you see fit. My goal in bringing this forward today is if we can take a vote in approving this, I would love to present this to the full board on Monday and to signal to them that as terms are coming up for renewal, if it passes on Monday, that a requirement to be reconsidered for this board or newly considered as we're bringing new folks in would be to sign off and pledge to commit to these particular items. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen now and show you this agreement. It's going to require me to find it with so many tabs open on my computer. It's a little embarrassing. Let me find it. Okay. It's opening. My computer's just
You
very.
guys gonna just shoot them to you real quick, Jennifer? You have them?
I do. My computer's.
Okay.
I needed to shut down all these tabs and let it rest overnight, and I didn't. And so it's just really upset with me and moving really slow right now. So hold on, I'm almost there.
It's kind of like the iPhone. A lot of people don't turn their phones off, and you have to really turn those phones off once a day for them to reset, or you'll get some crazy stuff sometimes.
I am not good at that, but you are exactly right. Okay, so I'm just going to read through these. Understand and ensure that the partnership reaches its statutory mission and vision. Understand the values of the partnership and use them in my decision-making. Understand the concept of fiduciary duty, including the requirement that as a board member, I owe my highest duty to the partnership and not to any organization who may have nominated me to be a member of the board. Understand the partnership's dual status as a public agency and a nonprofit, including the obligation to maintain records as public documents, including emails and text messages regarding partnership matters. Understand my statutory obligation to abstain from any action or official decision in which I have or may have a personal interest, including my obligation to announce the existence of personal interest and the obligation to be absent from any board meeting and vote in relation to the action or official decision in which I have a personal interest. Attend all regular and special board meetings and actively participate. Serve on at least one committee, attend all regular committee meetings and actively participate, be accessible at least by phone or email to staff and other board members, participate in the statutorily required board member orientation, attend as many partnership events as possible, share resources and talents, serve as an advocate within my circle of influence, fulfill commitments with agreed upon deadlines, maintain and promote high ethical standards, including good faith board decision-making, and avoiding an actual or perceived conflict of interest with other activities, interests, and organizations with which I may be involved, maintain confidentiality, understand and approve global partnership policies, be fiscally responsible by being familiar with and approving the budget, understand proper allocation of duties between the board and staff, communicate effectively and respect the diverse opinions of others, agree that in the event for whatever reason I can no longer fulfill my duties and responsibilities, I will immediately notify the board chair and make arrangements to transfer any outstanding responsibilities to other members of the board. Thoughts about this document as a starting point, and then happy to scroll up or down as you consider various items, 20 items on this list today to consider.
Well, number 16, what do we mean by global policies?
Yeah, that may not be the right word, Chris, because I get you. Amy, you helped us draft. Is Amy with us now? I heard the doorbell.
I know that's Dr. Milliner.
Oh,
No, Amy's
Dr.
still in her
Milliner. I
meeting.
can't see everybody now that I'm sharing
Yeah,
the screen.
yeah,
Welcome.
Dr. Milliner has joined us.
Okay, terrific.
I think the intent there is to say, understand and approve all partnership policies.
Okay,
I think globally just
Global,
means
yeah.
all.
Yeah,
I understand. Okay,
but if that's a question that you have, Chris, we may need to look at, change it to all.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna edit this as we go
Yeah.
today.
Because it is a draft document, so editing is right on point.
And Jennifer, you may want to put just a watermark on there to put draft on
Thank
there as
you.
well.
Yes.
That'd probably be good to have in the background.
Perfect. Somebody's gonna have to remind me how to do that. I haven't done that. Is it insert?
I'll do
You'll
it before it's
Thank
sent.
you. Thank
I'll
you.
do it before it's sent.
Perfect.
Jennifer, can you scroll back up to the top
yeah.
again? All right.
Sure thing. And then I want to go to 19 in just a moment when you're ready.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think they're good. I think the biggest thing that individuals that sit on the board have to realize is that the board is a governing committee in its truest form, and that governance has to take place in order for the partnership to be successful. Like, it doesn't fully rely on the CEO. Like, the board really functions as that body to make sure that things are pushed through an effective, insightful, informative way as well. And I think many of these points here capture the essence of what the board is supposed to do.
Good. To that end, is there anything else that we would want to say on 18 to make this even more explicit? Understand the proper allocation of duties between the board and staff. Is there anything else to contextualize that there to summarize what that actually means?
I think because I'm not sure if I even understand exactly what that means, the proper allocation of duties between the board and partnership staff. That's basically saying the difference between what Rita does and what we do.
What Laura and Rita do versus us. One example, Chris, may be understand that the board is responsible for setting policies and the strategic vision of the organization, while management and staff are responsible for executing the policies and executing the vision and operations of the organization. That might be one example of a way that you could summarize it at a very high level. Because we have some board members that may see themselves as more responsible than what is appropriate for executing the day-to-day decision-making and operations of the organization, which is not appropriate for us as board members. But again, maybe have not served in a board capacity before, so may just default to believing that it's operational instead of visionary and strategic policy making.
And Jennifer, I was just thinking, particularly for people who have not served on boards before, that may be a norm. They may have served on a PTA board, or they may have
Mhm.
served on a committee, or they may have served on some neighborhood something where the actual setup is dramatically different
Good point.
than a
Public
board of this
especially.
caliber.
That's right. That's a great point, Rita. Which means we're gonna probably want to double down in our board orientation process, having
Yes.
learned some of these lessons, through lived
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
But if we want to wordsmith 18 a little bit more, that would be great to me. And then 19, I think, deserves a little bit more explanation, because we could all define effective and respect in different ways. And so maybe if we could be more direct in terms of what we're seeking, and I don't want, how do I say this? I don't want to be so prescriptive and contain us that we're not allowed to have our own opinions and express them. But as an example, I would say that we would want to be held accountable that we are not allowed to be the spokespeople for the organization, because again, that unless we've been asked to do so. And that's a piece that I think has been detrimental to our brand and reputation in the community. That fragmented piece that Dr. Craddock spoke to, that has been illustrated in part, not in totality, but in part by the fact that we have board members speaking in opposition to what management is speaking to, with instead of keeping that disagreement inside the house, it's now gone outside the house to the public. So open to any suggestions, if you believe that 19 could be wordsmithed in a way to be even clearer, even more
Well,
clear.
before we get there, so I think that 18 and 19 are going to be very important. So the allocation of duties between the board and the partnership, I just will put money on it on Monday. There are going to be issues with the op-ed that comes out on Sunday, because nobody on the board knew that we were going to do that. So that goes into the allocation of duties between the board and the partnership. So what you will have happen, especially for someone like me who represents the neighborhood, and without knowing what the op-ed says, I still have, call it our non-constituents, that are going to feel some kind of way about that. And so to say that I shouldn't comment on it because I have people that talk to me all the time saying, I want you to make sure that you understand, and this is the way I feel, because, we don't answer questions. And so I just think that we have to be very careful on how we're wording that. To one, because I don't think this is going to bring us together. I think this will fragment us even more, because it's basically saying, we have to do what the partnership decides, even if your neighborhood doesn't agree with that. So I think it's very important that the board members still have that voice. Now, I don't know how we get folks to say, well, I'm speaking on behalf of Park Duval, not for the board. But there needs to be a way for, I don't necessarily agree. Yeah, I'm on the board, but I don't agree with that. Especially once we get down to assigning projects. It could very well be that, I feel like housing is more important in Park Duval, but yet in Park Hill, a business is more important. And so, I think as we're going forward, there are going to be disagreements when we're allocating this money. And, so I just think we have to be very careful that we're not censoring people and making people just stay tote the company line.
I understand.
Allow for that healthy debate. And if someone knocks on your door, talking about Russell or Park Duval, you need to be able to speak on behalf of that neighborhood that you're representing.
Well, I'm sorry. I was going to say, so think of it in this way. The critical role for every neighborhood representative is to represent the points of view and interests of your neighborhood, and to be open to talking to people in the neighborhood, and specifically bringing their points of view back to the board for discussion, so that we are aware of what folks in your neighborhood are thinking. Once the board votes to undertake an activity, however, that vote constitutes the agreement of the board. So once a decision is made by the board, it's incumbent on all of us to support that decision, whether or not we voted in favor of it. So I think this document is trying to speak to unity as a board. It's trying to speak to what is the appropriate way to communicate both before and after votes are taken. So no one is expecting that a neighborhood representative would not interact with the people in their neighborhood.
Right.
And it's critical for you to tell us what the folks in your neighborhood do and do not like, and what they expect us to do. But again, once the board acts, that action has to be supported by everyone on the board.
I want to jump into Laura and mention, because Chris, I take your point very seriously regarding the potential reaction on Monday of having an op-ed go out that hasn't been written by or blessed by the board. That's an example where Laura worked directly with the communication committee, which its charge is to support the communication strategy of the organization, right? And so we delegate as a full board to our committees, like the board is delegating that authority to this committee to review nominations and to bring forward recommendations for selection. The Community Engagement Committee has been working with management to roll out their strategy that doesn't require board approval. This communication piece is another example that is appropriate for management, but did go through committee oversight, I guess. And maybe we'll want to make that point explicitly on Monday so that there is a recognition that there is good checks and balance.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And let me say, it's in terms of that editorial, I wrote the initial draft, but that draft was radically changed by the committee after it began to review. And what we ended up with and what will be published in the Courier reflects all of those edits that the committee made. They changed what was said originally to from their perspective, make it more understandable, more and to communicate in a way that they thought was much more comfortable and direct with people in the community.
Chris,
And-
I see your hand back up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would push back a little bit on that, because being on the committee, the engagement committee, one, I felt that they should have been involved in that too, since this is basically engaging with the community. And two, also being on the engagement committee, I feel like everything that we propose, we bring to the board meeting to get approval before we actually take action on it. And so I think, once again, that's going to be a problem on Monday, because the board doesn't know that this is going out, and it happens, and then the board's going to find out. I mean, of course, we'll get it before it goes out, but it's, they're not being, kept in the loop, I guess is what it is.
Well,
Okay.
can I add something, Laura? Because here's the thing, oftentimes I'm involved in usually all connecting the dots. So I'm somewhat in awe, just, listening to this, because the Courier Journal reached out to the partnership and invited the partnership to submit an opt-in. It's almost like if the Courier Journal, Fox 41, WHAS, if they contact the partnership for an interview. Now, this is, Chris, are you suggesting that all of that would have to come to the board for approval before that takes place? I'm like in awe. Help me to understand what you're actually saying.
I'm saying that all the emails we get, is easy to send out an email saying that, hey, Laura's going to do a Fox News interview. But since we had a chance to respond to and do this op-ed, it could have been just easily said that, hey, Courier Journal is going to have us respond to the NAACP dropping out. We're going to craft an op-ed that will be published in Sunday's paper. And then people can comment like, hey, make sure you don't say this, and make sure you, suggestions or whatever that may take, or just letting us know that's going to happen and here's what we're going to say.
Well, and
Okay.
here's the thing, and let me just finish this because I'm like, helping to coordinate this. Literally, the final email just came yesterday from the Courier Journal. We've been monitoring this. This is a day-to-day work process. It is not a response to the NAACP. Now, I'm sure the Courier Journal would like that because they want to sell newspapers. This is about the partnership, and you will see it. You will see the op-ed. It is not about the NAACP. It is about the partnership and us moving forward. So I just wanted to incorporate that because I'm involved in the process and I see it from all sides. And so I don't see how this can be a problem. And I was trying to better understand what you were trying to communicate.
Yeah, I think, well, I think since the board is still in this infancy phase as it relates to a board, risk adverse, giving the conversations and what the board is now, say compared to where it was a year ago and things of that nature. My personal recommendation, after sitting here thinking it and seeing the conversation, will be honestly to not publish the op-ed piece until after the board meeting on Monday. And the reason why I say that, if this was a well-oiled machine at this point and a well-formulated board across the board where everyone's in sync, operating in capacity, because most people would say that given the fact that the communications committee and the community engagement committee came together and agreed upon next steps, that usually goes in front of the entire board to say, this is the direction that we're moving in, and this is how we're going to do this. And I say that I think it would be more helpful than harmful to, pause on the Courier Journal piece being published on Sunday on the heels of a board meeting occurring on Monday. Just personally, given the dynamic of the boards and how we're operating at this moment. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Craddock.
yeah.
Let's hear, I appreciate that input very much, and the thoughtfulness, Chris, you, Dr. Craddock, and now Alicia, let's hear from you too.
I concur with both of the individuals that spoke, everybody that's spoken, but we do have to recognize that the elephant in the room is there is a lack of trust going on right now. I understand that there had to be a committee meeting taking place before, Ms. Laura, you took any action. I understand that process, but someone looking on the outside in are going to approach the neighborhood individuals on what's taking place. Did you know about that? It's not about us saying get approval. It's really simply what I'm saying is we should know about it, at least the details of what is going out, because it looks really bad. I've had conversations where they've asked me questions and I knew we voted on it. I knew the committee met on it. I was sitting in the room. I'm fully aware of what took place. But then they asked me about something being published or something going out, or did you know this? And I did not know that it had to go to the next level. And it's not that I didn't understand that it was going to take place. I just didn't know it was going to happen at that time. So it looks like you guys are doing something that the neighborhood people do not know. And that's not necessarily the case. It's just we don't have that last piece. And I see that right now by the NAACP not being present, that is a big blow to how the community is going to see this partnership. I don't know about Chris, but I know I'm getting a lot of conversations about that. And it would make it easier for us to support the partnership and be able to have those conversations with our neighborhood. If we know, okay, hey, we don't know the details of this notification going out to the Courier Journal, but they will be addressing it on Sunday in the Courier Journal. At least that gives us something to say versus not knowing. It's not the details of it, it's just knowing that there's something going out.
Okay, so let's, and again, I'm sorry, Jennifer, I don't mean to hog up the time for your committee, but this is an important issue for us to think through now. Just as you are articulating and expressing concern about how things will work in the neighborhood and how things will work among board members, if the article is published and people don't know anything about it. There are other eyes and other vantage points that are occurring here. As an entity, as a public agency, we have to manage our relationship with the press. We have to do that on a day-to-day basis. It's not in our best interest to decide that we're not going to respond, that we will not answer questions from reporters, because that creates a different kind of view of us and our ability to function. There will be occasions where we will receive questions from the press and we will have to answer those questions without shopping them through the entire board for approval. That can't, that's just not logistically possible. In this instance, since the op-ed is already drafted, let me ask you, would it be helpful then to send a copy of the op-ed to all board members today
That's what we're planning to do.
to let them know that it will appear in the Courier on Sunday? Does that take care of the issue that you're raising regarding notice to the board?
It does for me. It does for me.
Same here. Yeah, and it.
Okay, and Chris, what about you?
Yes, I think that most definitely was something that we need to do.
Okay, all right, so that people will know that it's gonna be in the newspaper and they will have a chance to read it before everybody else sees it. Okay.
So
well, we
what
can
I'll
that.
do, it was going out today with the board paperwork. I'll send it separately.
Good.
Okay, so that everybody can
Good.
see it separately, and I'll
Good.
send it after this meeting so
Perfect.
that everybody has it early. Does that, because I was just confused because it was going out today.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll send it separately.
Okay,
And
now
I
let me
wanted-
say,
Go ahead, Laura.
I was gonna say, and let me say one more thing. Based on the actions that the board is going to take or be asked to take at the upcoming board meeting, we are going to be required to develop a very tight communications plan to roll out activity over the next several months, because the board is going to be asked to take some crucial steps and to make some crucial approvals. That communications plan is critical in terms of its ability to set the stage and to let the community know what we are doing and to anticipate our next steps. It's a way for us to celebrate success with the community. Now, I cannot tell you in advance as we're talking today that every member of the board is going to know every single piece of paper that goes out as part of that communications plan, but we will keep people up to date. It will be a description of what we plan to do or what's going to happen next.
Okay, good. Thank you, Laura. And I want to summarize this part of our conversation in two ways, if I may, briefly. One, to thank everyone for the candid, thoughtful, robust conversation. That is what the norm should be and what we're all aspiring for as a new-ish board and new-ish committees. Chris, I want to circle back to something my ears heard as you were speaking that really I want to emphasize. It is never the expectation from my standpoint that any of us are being called upon to rubber stamp something. Laura's description of the board governance role to basically be responsible for compartmentalizing a personal opinion and instead speak to the overall board vote is what I hope we can go for, that once a vote is made and the majority vote prevails, that's what we're going to align around and set aside personal opinions otherwise. But your point, Chris, is important because as neighborhood representatives, I have a particular interest in making sure that you feel, one, aligned with where this committee is going, because this is your committee, and that we have this robust discussion and get rumble as necessary, respectfully and professionally, until we get to a good place. The other piece, Dr. Craddock, that I want to highlight is that we are in a different stage of development. We've all kind of teetered around the edges of what Alicia was able to name directly for us, which is there is not the level of trust yet established. So we're going to operate in a more risk-averse way now, being even more proactive in our communications. Having heard this feedback today, it will be even more heightened on my radar, even as your committee chair. When I'm in spaces and places hearing about things that we might be contemplating as an organization, to ensure that we're pressing pause to contemplate how do we use this as an opportunity to build trust, with the hope that if we do that now, we'll get to a place where we are that well-oiled machine, where the management team is acting more independently over time. So does that sound like a fair way to summarize where I heard each of your voices and where we can move forward from today?
Jennifer, I think that's well said.
Thank you. Any other pushback, comments, or concerns at this stage? And Dr. Milliner, I certainly want, as our chairwoman, for you to weigh in any way that you see fit today. And if you're good, I'm good. Okay. All right. Thank you all. And let me just offer one more moment of pause here. If you want to weigh in. Any further? Okay, well, I hear us saying that Rita's going to send out a direct communication to the board explaining the process by which management used to put the op-ed together and how the Courier-Journal invited its placement and when it's planned to be placed. And we'll continue to encourage that feedback loop, even as we meet on Monday. So that we continue to use these forums to educate and remind the differences between management and board, and how using every opportunity to continue to build trust together. So thank you. This was very helpful and super productive from my standpoint. Okay, we have 9 minutes remaining. I don't see our general counsel here, so we're going to table the discussion as it relates to a potential bylaw change, because I do need Amy here to help walk us through a potential recommendation to modify the scope and the name of this committee. So I don't purposely leave suspense, but I do want Amy here for that. So we'll table that discussion for now. Instead, what I'd like to go back to is the nominator process, because I would like you to respond to the nominator process that I outlined. And if you're so ready, I'd be happy to take a motion to approve that process so that we can go to the board meeting on Monday aligned as a committee that we are in full support with the timeline of activating the 4 neighborhoods.
She's in another meeting. And that's Mr.
I motion that we approve the nominating process to take to the board.
Thank you, Chris.
I second.
Okay, Alicia, thank you. Any other discussion about the nominator process? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes. The second vote that I'd like to take today, if you're so ready, is the approval of the board agreement that we would be asking board members to sign upon their re-election or new election to the board, effective upon its approval by the full board. Is there any other discussion about that board agreement document? I'm happy to share my screen again and give us another chance to take another look at it.
And Jennifer, I was trying to edit from here. It's locked on my side.
I'm
so let me
sorry.
take a snapshot of the changes you made.
Okay.
And I have it locked, and when you go to save it, you may not be able to save it.
I understand. Okay, gotcha.
All right, so if you can go down to, let me
to start on this page.
Yeah, let me do the whole, just do the whole thing. Go to number 1. Yeah, and that way I want to make sure we have everything.
Jennifer, can I provide a possible recommendation?
Yes, please.
Could it could it be possible that we take a draft copy to the overall board for any feedback and recommendations that we come back
Absolutely.
and review and do it? I just think it'd be kind of helpful from an involvement standpoint and making sure that, you know, it's the best document that it can be.
Excellent. I like that a lot. That's a great example of building trust along the way and building buy-in along the way. So why don't, instead of us coming out with a recommendation on Monday, instead we say, this is the draft that we've generated after recommendation from management. The committee made some edits. Now we're bringing it to the full board for your consideration and edits. And again, if we could wordsmith 19 to talk about that alignment around board votes specifically, because Chris, your point is so well taken. Don't want to censor or restrict you as a neighborhood rep. You've got an important role to play in sharing discussion and around the activities. But so I think we want to make it clear it's not censorship as much as setting aside personal opinions to maintain the fidelity to the board decision-making process. And I don't know how we concisely say that or say that in a way that makes sense. So maybe Laura, if you and Rita can contemplate 19 for us.
Okay.
And then Amy as well, because, you know, Amy helped with this as well.
Absolutely. So we'll put the draft watermark on it. We'll submit it on Monday as a draft for discussion purposes. And then if we're ready to take a vote on Monday, that would be terrific, particularly as this committee moves forward with our activities throughout the summer. What I wanted to say lastly, as it relates to that document, my suggestion is that we have a similarly crafted message for our nominators. In other words, we don't want nominators to not have the best interest of the partnership at hand when they're doing their work in communities and neighborhoods. So if you're open, I'd like to ask our management team to take a hand at crafting a similarly worded document, but instead of board member, it says nominator on behalf of the partnership. So that, again, that we're creating a context, a framework, some guidelines for our nominators so that they're honoring the responsibility of working in the best interest in a good faith way for the partnership. Are you all comfortable with that?
Yes, absolutely. That's a good idea.
And then Jennifer, the other point that I want to make with regard to that, when the nominator will set up the process for the nominators, but as the nominators move into having people to interview for board seats, then once the board agreement is approved, that has to be a part of the tools that the nominators use to communicate to candidates.
Good.
Because
Yes.
people have to understand coming in what the expectation and what they have to commit to. Because if they're not in support of anything, they need to know that up front.
Totally. Good point. Okay. All right, committee members, with 3 minutes remaining, what other business do we have to bring before the committee today? Anything else that's on your minds?
Everybody looks so enthused.
I know.
On Friday.
Well, we've covered a lot today. I just appreciate again so much your commitment to this work, to this committee on a Friday, on a hot sizzling Friday morning.
Yes.
I think we're going to be well prepared to go into the board discussion on Monday. I do anticipate we'll have a variety of opinions and feedback, but I trust that together we'll continue to navigate our way forward, hearing and making sure that we're validating the diverse perspectives and helping to educate the differences between board and management, as well as to continue to build trust along the way. So as your committee chair, I just want to pledge again my commitment to this process to keep showing up in an authentic and open way and doing my part to help nurture this board and bring us all together.
One last point of clarification. Is this committee comfortable with me sending the draft of the board agreement with the other board materials? Or is that something you all want me to send separately as well?
I think sending it with the documentation is fine, as long as there's a watermark on it that clearly says draft.
Oh, yeah, draft.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
That's-
it will be. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And maybe even being explicit on the agenda, Rita, that this is for discussion purposes and input. so that people, as they're reading it, know that their voice will be heard in the room on Monday. Okay, anything else for the committee today? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Wonderful. All right, Chris, you're gonna second that, I
I'll
bet.
second, yes.
All right, you guys have a
All right.
wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
Thank
Good
you.
weekend,
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Have
y'all.
a good week.
Bye,
Bye. Thank you. Let me end it on.